This is the first speaker of the Spring 2010 James Wood Speaker Series. And I know many of you have attended several of these in the past. It's a wonderful opportunity for us to have leaders in our community from various organizations come and share some of their thoughts with our students. It's a great opportunity to network, as you can see. We always have a full house, so I want to thank you for doing this. Before I introduce Mr. Lewis, I want you to all go and pick up one of these from the business school. This has the 6 speakers for this year, starting with today, and a brief bio, and put it on in your appointment book, because again, this is a great opportunity for you to meet them. So now let me briefly read you a bio of Mr. Lewis, who is the speaker today. Chuck Lewis, the president and CEO of One Georgia Bank, founded the bank in May 2006. Prior to that, he served as a senior executive vice president and chief operating officer of the Citizen Trust Bank for 22 years. Under Mr. Lewis's leadership, the bank, the One Georgia Bank, capitalized with about $24.2 million and 400 shareholders. At that time, that was the largest capital raised for the first issue of a state-chartered bank in Georgia's history. If you have a chance, you need to go visit his bank, because it is high tech. Dr. Tidwell and I had the opportunity to go visit. It's not your father's bank, I can tell you that. And so it's a great bank. It's one of the fastest growing banks. He is very successful because he's innovative. Mr. Lewis currently serves on the Carter Center Board of Trustees of Georgia Council on Economic Education, Georgia Chamber of Commerce, the Emory Board of Visitors, etc. In 1997, he was selected by Georgia Trend magazine as one of the 40 under 40 rising stars in the state of Georgia. He earned his BA in Banking and Finance from Morehouse College in 1983. Please help me welcome Mr. Chuck Lewis. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Wow, I'll tell you, can you guys hear me? Okay. For a minute there, I didn't know, Sabrina, that he was talking about me, but sounded real good. Well, what I want to talk to you guys about today is how do you make yourself a marketable asset? And what I mean by making yourself a marketable asset, how do you get others to buy into not only your vision, but your ability to actually accomplish goals? And making yourself a marketable asset will provide you with an opportunity to take advantage of opportunities. Because I'll tell you, this is a tough, tough world. It's not easy. And you have to do everything in your power to prepare. And I started my track a long time ago. I kind of pride myself, and hopefully I can leave you with this: think strategically about your goals and objectives. Whether you are the CEO of a company, or whether or not you're in school and trying to get your degree for the first time, or whether you're going back for a graduate degree, or whatever you're trying to do. But think strategically about what you want to do, and it will help you accomplish your goals. What I am doing now, the things that you heard, those things are things that I started working on when I was 16 years old, founding a bank. Now that's not a common goal for people to want to do, but it's something I started as a teenager working toward, getting my degree in banking and finance, starting to work in the bank, getting a mentor that could help guide my way into senior management. And by the time I was 26 years old, I was already a senior officer in the bank. In fact, by the time I was 29, I was the #2 officer in the bank. And it gave me the platform at a very early age to build a resume and also build a core competency that when my time came, and this is my whole thing, that when my time came, that no one would be able to deny me my opportunity, because I will be so good, so competent, so ready to perform, that others will be able to see that light shining and buy into that vision and follow me. And I tell you, it's a scary thing sometimes, because you don't really know. You think you're ready, you know you're ready, and in fact you have that urge. There's an urge that comes when it's time for you to make a major move. There's an urge that comes within you. and you've prepared, you've worked hard, you've done the little things. You've worked all night, done all-nighters. You've done the things that it took, you've sacrificed. And you've done the little small things that it takes in order for others to see that vision in you and invest in you and in your goals and in your vision. And that's a major, major deal. The first time that I knew, I felt that I was ready, I knew that I was ready, I met with my first person that I wanted to invest with me. The first time I'd ever talked to anybody about it. And the guy said, you know what? Called me a young man because he's like 70-something years old. Said, you know what, young man, I've heard about you. And you know what? You can count me in. I'll do whatever it takes to help you accomplish your goal. And that happened again, it happened again, it happened again. And each person said, I'm not investing in your bank, I'm investing in you. I'm investing in the fact that you have a core competence, that you are the reason that this venture is going to be successful. Because I know you're going to have tough times. But when you have tough times, you've got to have the perseverance and the determination and the readiness and the experience to be able to go through it. Now, I can tell you about perseverance right now because the banking business, we're going through it. So perseverance right now is the key. But we'll be left standing. And the reason we'll be left standing is because there's an undeniable determination to succeed that's inherent within my organization, and it starts with me. It all starts with the leader. If you don't set a positive example, if you're not willing to work and you're not willing to do the things that it takes, then how can you expect anybody else to do it? And you don't start that when you become CEO. You start that from the very, very beginning of your career. From the time that you leave this room, you start that moment in time where you start to prepare yourself in another way with that clear vision that I am going to accomplish my goals. And I'm going to do the best in my classwork. I'm going to do the best in my job. I'm going to do the best of my abilities. And I'm going to make myself a key marketable asset. You're all here for a reason. This is a great turnout. I love this turnout. This is awesome. And you're here to learn from someone else that has gone through some things that you haven't gone through. And I don't think that there's a person in the room that have gone through what I've gone through, because there's only a handful of me in the whole country. Because there's not a whole lot of guys that have done what I've done. So I know that no one has walked in my specific path, because I know all of the people that have. And not only do I know all the people that have, I've studied the ones that came before me intently. The reason that I look at this economy, and no one could have foretold this. No one would have known that this would have followed the footsteps of the Great Depression. But I can tell you this: I learned from those bankers that, and I'm not saying, hey, look, I've got my problems. I'm not going to say that, because you can't go through this without problems. But I did learn from those bankers that experienced something very similar in 1929. In 1929, this country was riding a wave. It was in the industrial age. And during the industrial age, this country was just coming out of a largely agricultural economy in the 1800s. In 1871, there was a crash in that marketplace. And so that marketplace crashed. And that was a huge depression during that period of time. You had banks fail. You had all kinds of similar things that you see now back in the 1870s. And that repeated itself again in 1929. The economy changed into an industrialized economy. You had steel making in the mid-Atlantic states and in the heartlands. You had industrialization in Michigan. A lot of people left the South and migrated into Michigan during that period. Wall Street, the markets were at their all-time high. You had a golden age in the 1920s. Well, all that crashed all of a sudden. Over-exuberance, the mixing and commingling of investment banking, commercial banking, insurance industries, caused the same issues that we're facing right now today, because it happened again, because we don't learn. It's going to happen again. It is. It's just it's inevitable. But what the best bankers did during that period of time that I saw, the best bankers simplified their portfolios. They worked down their risk tolerances, and they stayed steady to the course, stayed safe until the market changed. And it lasted a long time. From 1929 to 1933, This economy was in the tank, much like you see it in the tank right now. This is the closest period that we've been to that since that time. Scary economy. Last year, telling from a person that's experienced it, last year around this same time, I looked at a marketplace where there was no ready buyers or sellers for anything. Historically, especially in this state, you've always had a ready market for real estate. Real estate had gone up and up and up and up. It wasn't on a bubble like in Florida, and we prided ourselves on the fact that we were not in a bubble. And Georgia, especially Metro Atlanta, will always grow. It'll always grow. There'll always be growth in Metro Atlanta because we have no natural boundaries. People want to live here. The quality of life is good. You've got great universities and schools. You've got great places to work, subdivisions. Everything is good in Atlanta, and it's a lot better in Atlanta than it is in Detroit, where it's cold. It's a lot better than in Atlanta than it is in other places where it's cold and you don't have the same quality of life, and you get more house. You get more house if you retire from New York City, you move to Atlanta. You move from an efficiency apartment to 10,000 square feet because of the difference in prices. And I know people that have done that. So we had overexuberance in this marketplace, much like there was overexuberance in other sectors or other time periods within this country's history. But we also had overexuberance in the recent times. Now, what happened here is not the same as what happened at that period of time, with one exception. The whole market crash was a direct result of greed, and not greed at the micro level, but greed at the very largest levels. There's a company called AIG Financial Services, and most of you have already heard of them, and you probably know the role better than I do that they played in this whole debacle. But they were primarily responsible for a bottoming out and a crash in residential real estate. And when residential real estate crashed, so did commercial real estate. Commercial real estate is kind of hanging in there. We don't quite know how bad that's going to be. We think it's going to be bad, but it's a little bit different. On the micro level of commercial real estate, where you have the strip centers and the shopping malls, those are in trouble. Anytime you deal with unemployment as high as the unemployment levels that we're dealing with, and then you deal with commercial real estate from a leasing standpoint, people aren't buying if they don't have jobs, so they can't pay the lease rental rates. And that presents a whole nother problem for the owners and the owners of the businesses and the owners of the commercial real estate, because the prices drop in the commercial real estate because people can't afford to pay it. And so the value of the real estate goes down because the price of the rents that they're able to charge goes down. So AIG Financial Solutions was actually a beautiful thing in the late 80s. It morphed and developed into a monster that was uncontrollable because of its early success. Its early success was that they would take household mortgages. I'm simplifying the model, but they would take household mortgages, bundle up thousands of them at a time, and study the characteristics of that and package it together. And then large institutional investors would buy either whole pieces or pieces of residential real estate mortgages that are all grouped together in large packs. And the one thing that they, as well as others, have discovered long ago is that when you group together large packs of mortgages and mortgage-backed securities, what those mortgage-backed securities will have a tendency to do is they will have characteristics. It's almost as though they come alive. They have what we call prepayment speeds. That means they'll pay down to a certain level. There'll be certain levels of delinquencies within it, and all of it produces a yield. And that's what those guys were looking for. I'm going to take 150 mortgages that originated by mortgage brokers. I'm going to buy those from them. And I'm going to take them, I'm going to package them up, and then I'm going to go to the largest institutional investors that invest on a daily basis billions of dollars. And I'm going to sell that to them, and I'm going to make a spread off of it. And they, in fact, are going to take that, and they're going to make money off of the return as the individual people continue to pay their mortgage, and it goes to a servicer, and it comes back to them. and it pays down at a certain rate. And so it becomes a pretty steady instrument. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's been done for years and years and years. It provides liquidity in the mortgage market. It provides you with an opportunity to go out and buy a house and know that there's a mortgage out there that you can get because there's a large institutional investor willing to invest in it. Problem that came up with AIG Financial. They were a good company that was founded by some guys that left Wall Street, had a good idea. They could take these mortgages, understand them, change some of the characteristics in those mortgages, in some of those mortgage-backed securities, and then repackage them and resell them, and they would bring greater yield. And what they did was they created a derivative of the mortgage-backed security. So once they created the derivative of the mortgage-backed security, they were able to increase their yields because they were doing some pretty sophisticated stuff with that model. And I don't have enough time. You guys are probably hungry too. It's lunchtime. So I won't go into all the details of all the structures. But I will tell you this. It got out of hand. It got out of hand because the original group that understood the compliance levels, understood how you make a mortgage-backed security, how you change a derivative into something more, those guys were terminated. You know why? Because the CEO of AIG looked at how much money they were making, and he wanted some of it. Because they were in a partnership with AIG. AIG Financial Solutions was not a direct subsidiary of AIG. It was a partnership, 50-50 partnership. And those guys, when I tell you they were making money, they were making some serious money. You know, a lot of us look at athletes and we see a guy sign a $50 million contract, and we say, wow, that guy, he's made a whole lot of money. The guys on Wall Street, that's nothing to them. I mean, some of those guys make $50 million a day. They make, in fact, they make 70% of the income in the United States. 70%. All the rest of us, we live on the other 30%. Life's good to me, you know, I pay my bills. But that just tells you the enormous amount of wealth that's being generated there and the enormous amount of impact that they have in the buying and selling of others. They don't make anything. They just take what everybody else produces, bundle it up, create an efficient marketplace, and make money off of it. And we need them. Well, they're greedy. Yeah, they're greedy. But we need that efficient market for the whole economy to work properly, so that we all can benefit from an efficient market that is now global. And they demonstrated how global it was because when they crashed, when they became too risky, they were producing a derivative product that they didn't even understand. And what I mean by that is, you take the mortgage that I was talking about, the mortgage that, let's say you got 1,000 more, let's say is $5 million. Probably $5 billion, but I would say $5 million. You take that $5 billion package of mortgages, and then you say, you put it over here, and you say, you know what? I'm gonna link that $5 million worth of mortgages. I'm gonna link its return to the Japanese yen. And if the Japanese yen rises and falls by 20 basis points, then my product, which I've already swapped the interest rates on these two products, my product is going to have a certain characteristic. It's going to rise and fall by 25 basis points. But you don't stop there. Then you link it, and I'm being facetious, then you link it to the price of tea in China. And then you link it to some other index in India. And it becomes a mush of all kinds of things that no one can really realistically understand. And then you take that with an overzealous salesperson, and I'll never forget one of the guys that sold me bonds back in the early 90s. He told me years later, after he learned his business, he said, Chuck, you know, when I first started selling you bonds, I didn't know a bond from a basketball. I said, oh, you didn't? Scared me to death. And some of these guys didn't know that bond from a basketball. And they sold it worldwide. They sold it to countries. They sold it to Italy, France. They sold that product worldwide. So when AIG, when they took their tumble, when they crashed and burned, when it was finally realized that they didn't know, the new guys that were in charge didn't know what they were doing, and there were 3 or 4 iterations of new guys, and they didn't have a handle on it. And when that finally came to light, You saw what you saw last year when you saw the President of the United States come on television. This was actually '08, and say, you know, we're facing a global financial crisis. Actually, before he said it, Ben Bernanke and the head of the Ben Bernanke, President of the Federal Reserve, and Geithner, Treasury Department Secretary, they both came on television in a joint statement. Never seen that happen. That was in October. Then Lehman Brothers fell down. Then the big rush after that was to save AIG. Had to save AIG. They were insuring all that money, all those bonds. You're talking about a global calamity is what we faced. And so when people say, oh, well, they're just throwing all this bailout money. No, that's money. There's a reason for that. Because they went unchecked, and they caused a global financial crisis that would have felt unlike anything that we've ever seen. And hopefully right now we're starting to see a little bit of improvement, and by and by we'll see a little bit of improvement, and we've got to pay for that. There's just no way to get around it. There's no other way to do it. We have to pay for it. You've got to pay for it. I've got to pay for it. We all got to pay for it, for their mistakes. But we can learn from it. Now hopefully you look back and you understand. I tried to look back in 1929 and try to understand and did research and tried to understand the economy, what was going on during that period. So it will help me to make better decisions now, because the one thing about it, the fundamentals don't change. They all stay the same. That's why I say this is going to happen again. It's going to happen in a different way. Because the emerging economy that we're going to see come out of this is not the same economy we saw before it. It's going to morph, it's going to change, but it's still going to be fed. It's still going to be primed by Wall Street investment capital, because they have billions and billions and billions of dollars to invest. And it's not just Wall Street; it's pension funds. If you have, if some of you are teachers, let's say, and you have, and you're in a pension fund, or a city worker and you're in a pension fund, and you're looking for that pension fund to pay you significant benefits. What happens is the pension funds and the annuities that are being invested in, they create a large level of capital, because they're pulling capital from hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people, and they're paying in so much, and the company and the states and municipalities are paying in so much, and they become large amounts of money. How can an investment banker return? You can't guarantee a return. You should. If you hear somebody tell you they guarantee a return, go the other way. I mean, unless it's, you know, from a CD or some instrument like that. But if it's on the market, no one can guarantee your return. That's Bernie Madoff. That's another conversation. But those individuals, all the individuals. This is why I said that we need them to make it all work, because the retirement of those individuals that have, and this is not the only source of money, is retirement money. There's other sources of money, but that is a key source of money. And then the super wealthy. When I talk about super wealthy, I'm not talking about see somebody that's probably popular. Anybody you can think of that you probably would see on a normal daily basis. One thing about my business, being in the money business, I see a lot of things a lot of people don't see. And it's real interesting. I've got another buddy that's a banker in Boston, and he came down to see me, and I was lucky to have some Masters tickets. Didn't happen often, but I had some, so don't sweat me about the Masters tickets. But I happened to have some, and I couldn't go. And so he came down from Boston, and he came to meet me, and a brilliant guy. In fact, he's the youngest of 5, and all of his 4 older brothers graduated from Harvard, and he went to Yale. He was the only one that went to Yale, but he went back to Harvard and got his MBA and his law degree. And he was a guy similar to me up in Boston, and he came down with one of his best friends from Yale. And the guy had never worked a job in his life, and he came into my office, and they were all excited about going to the Masters, and the guy's name was Roy. And I said, well, Roy, what do you do? Yeah, I just handle my family's investments. What's that? We own gold mines. What? You own a gold mine? Yeah, we own gold mines in our family for 100 years. So the things that you, I mean, I'm sitting here listening to this guy. He's just as humble as he wants to be, and just excited because I got in some master's ticket. I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. but just a lot of people like that have large sums of money to invest end up being the money that's being played with by these folks, and they make money off of it, and they find a way to invest in market sectors, and they do all type of stratifications on every type of company, every type of business sector, and they're really, really smart guys. But they're unchecked, totally unchecked, they will get us into trouble, and we'll get into trouble again. But learning from past history is a great lesson and great teacher, great motivator for being able to take your company, whether you're running your own company now or you plan to run your own company in the future, whether you want to get started in business, learning from the past and learning from what can happen to you as a result of the past is very, very vital. It's one of the key things that, and as a CEO, you have to be part futurist. It's not enough to be able to deal with the day-to-day. You have got to see what's coming down the pipe tomorrow and prepare your company for it. And if you are able to do that, and you don't have to be CEO to do it, just you as an individual, be able to learn from the past and be able to visualize where things are going. And I can tell you, and temper that with one thing, and I hope there's one thing I hope that you can learn from me today, is temper it with the fundamentals, please. Back in the late 90s, I was up in Washington, D.C., and I was there with a lobby group, and we were lobbying Congress on financial institutions issues. And when I was up there, I thought it was real interesting because you have breakout sessions where you bring in people and talk to you, much like I'm talking to you now. We do the same thing. And this guy came in, and he was there, and it was all bankers. We were all sitting around a round table, and he was talking about this new thing that was emerging, and it was internet stock. And I'm listening to this guy. He's talking about the fundamentals of, and I had a PC. I knew when I clicked on something, I didn't view that as revenue. And he said, well, the thing of it is, our revenue is going to be so robust in the future. But right now, the way we make money is we make money by people investing in our future. You make money by people. You don't have a return. So if you continue to operate the way you're operating, there'll be no more investor money. So you'll have lost everybody's investment, and you're waiting for clicks to pay off. Didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So I told the guy, I said, there's a fundamental problem here. You've got to be able to generate revenue with what you're doing. I mean, I think everybody sees that there's going to be a progression. Now, this is over 10 years ago, so there's going to be a progression with computers, but how are you going to make money by building a website? Well, we're going to build this website, and it's going to be robust. We're going to have all these people come to our website. Okay, they come to your website, then what? Or how are you going to make money? Couldn't explain it. So I got on then he turned to me, he said, well, you just don't understand. I said, okay. So I get on, I'm thinking, okay, this guy's he's such a loon. And I get on the elevator with a buddy of mine from Texas, and his name was Lupe. I said, Lupe, can you believe that guy? He's talking to bankers about a business model that doesn't make any sense. You can't generate any revenue out of it. He looked at me, he said, well, Chuck, the guy said you didn't understand. Jeez. So sticking with the fundamentals, if it makes revenue, it has to generate revenue. And if somebody tries to sell you some swamp land in Florida, don't buy it. And we all know what happened to those guys. They lost a bunch of money, everything crashed, and we went through a little financial trouble at that time, but we recovered, and then we had 9/11 happen. We went through that. We recovered. Those were ups and down spikes that happened, and then we had this big crash. That was a real serious thing. But learning from the past, temper it with some fundamentals. But the real key before you get into the game is make sure that you prepare yourself. People thought I was crazy when I first started. It was like I was like 22, 23 years old, and I got into the bank, and I go into the president's office and want to talk to him, and didn't want anything. I just want to talk to him, find out where his head was, and told him the first day, I said, I want your job. I did. And he looked at me, and he was about 60-something years old at the time. He just laughed, and he said, you know what, young man, I like your enthusiasm. And from that, when opportunities came, we had a controller that came and I was performing well. I wasn't in the job that I wanted, and I didn't care. I wanted to learn everything about that job and make myself the best at that. Because the one thing I do see now, I do see people that don't like their job and do poorly at it. Don't want to come work on time, don't want to do a good job, but they want the paycheck, but they don't want to do what it takes in order to shine in that job. The best way to do it is to shine at whatever you do all the time. That's the best way to do it. And so I was in a job I hated, but I learned from that job. There's always a learning experience in everything. I learned from that job. I met a lot of people. I learned the level of the business that I would, if I had not done it, I wouldn't know it today. I wouldn't know my craft as well as I know it today if I had not done those things. And so he comes over, the same guy, this is 3 years later, comes over to me and says, "Hey, young man, how much accounting have you had? How much do you know about accounting?" I said, "Well, I had a double major, finance and accounting." I didn't tell him I dropped the accounting major because I wanted to graduate. It was like, I had a lot of accounting, but I had to get out of school. I mean, that was going to keep me there for a while. So he put me in the accounting department, and I went in there and I applied myself, and I studied, I worked hard. And eventually, that's where I got my first opportunity to be a senior officer. But if I had, and I was 6 years after I started, but if I hadn't done those things, if I had looked at that first job, if I came in there with all that spunk and vigor, sat down in that man's office, and then went out there, got into a job, and flopped. Because I didn't like the job, didn't like the people, If I had done those things, I wouldn't have got that second opportunity. My career would never have built on itself. And I never would have learned all those little things that it took in order to do what I wanted to do later in life that I knew I was going to do. I knew I was going to have my shot. And I got there. And it's probably 30 minutes. So I think questions and answers are appropriate. Yes?
What's one of the key recovery plans that you have in place as we are so dramatically affected by the banking industry right now?
Well, I think primarily what we have in terms of recovery, we have a situation where Washington right now, I don't think has a good strong handle on what to do. And I'll tell you the reason why I say that. I'm not saying that for any frivolous reason. Last year, during the first in the beginning of the Obama administration, just before, in fact, and then after, Treasury said, well, we're going to stabilize real estate market. Okay, so all that stuff I talked about in terms of the destabilization of the market and how it was destabilized, they were going to come up with a plan to stabilize the market. We're going to bring property values back. Okay, property values only come back through people willing to buy and sell. You could put a temporary stimulus in it, but the stimulus should push it down the road into something else. Do you know that all those billions of dollars that were appropriated to stabilize the real estate market have never come to fruition? The only good thing that came out was SBA guarantees and limit changes. That's good. Right now, we're looking at another $30 billion in the stimulus in the small business, and I am for that. My institution is one of the top leaders in the state in small business lending, and that includes Bank of America, and Wells Fargo, and everybody else. And the reason that we focused on that is because, one, a lot of people don't know how to do that well. They don't know how to lend in that market sector and do that well, and we've been able to find a way to do that. So getting small business back to work is going to be the real key. A lot of the stimulus plans are okay for a temporary fix, but that's all they are. It's a temporary fix. We've got to find ways to get small business. Small business is the largest employer in this country, and we've got to get small business back to work. Question? Wow, no questions. Maybe I answered everything, Mike. Yes, sir.
Yes. I'm certain you listened to Obama's State of the Union. And my question is, after he addressed all the different concerns, how do you feel? Do you feel like at least he has an understanding of what's...
Well, I think one thing about Obama is that he's an extraordinarily intelligent man. I don't think anyone can take that. Now, I think what has to happen, though, in order for the translation of his vision into America, is that there needs to be some buy-in along the way. Now, there's not going to be total buy-in by everybody, but there has to be some buy-in, and it has to happen fairly quickly in order for the visions, because he's a very aggressive guy. And in order for those visions to be implemented, you've got to get Treasury involved. You've got to get every leading agency. You've got to get the Defense Department. He's providing a vision for all of it, and incentive for them to follow along, because he can remove heads and put people in. But that's just a waste of time if you have to resort to doing that. You need to be able to have the buy-in and the implementation that has to follow all the way down the line. It comes from the president. It goes to the Congress. Congress creates legislation. Legislation goes to regulators. Regulators then provide the framework for everybody else to operate within. And so all that buy-in has to fall all the way through in order for his vision to work. So there's a lot of other hands that are in that equation. So I hope and pray that it happens, but it depends on a lot of other factors. No different than a lot different than a major corporation, because it's a lot bigger. It's the United States. But it is very similar to how a large corporation or any corporation operates. Even in my little small company, I can articulate a vision. I can say, we're going to do SBA lending, and then I hire somebody to be the SBA, and then I don't know he's incompetent. He says all the right stuff, and I don't know the guy's incompetent, and then it doesn't happen, and it happened because I got the wrong person in that position. So all I'm saying is that I think the vision is great. It's inspiring. But there has to be some execution, and it's going to have to come from all the people down the line that have all the different responsibilities in order to make that vision happen. Yes?
You said earlier in your talk that when you were first starting out, you had a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
Will you tell us how you went about getting a mentor, and you currently mentor? If any of these students would like a mentor, how they might go about doing it?
Well, that's a good question, and I'll tell you, I'm gonna be honest with you about this. I had someone that I modeled a lot of my thinking after. And sometimes your mentor doesn't even know that they're your mentor.
And they don't need to.
And they don't have to. But you go there and you pick their brain. And you figure out, okay, for me, I go back to my little apartment. Well, actually, it was a pretty nice little apartment for a 20-some-year-old guy. But I used to go back to my little apartment. I used to think about what that guy was doing, the decisions that he was making on a daily basis. And so, yeah, he was mentoring me. A lot of times, now toward the latter end of his life, he took full credit. But at the time, he had no clue that I was watching everything that he did. So that's a very, very, so mentorship. I have a lot of people come to me and say, I'm looking for a mentor. I want you to be my mentor. Well, the best way, in my mind, for that to happen is for you to take it upon yourself to provide that level of leadership yourself. And you go out and you say, well, you know what? This is what I want to do. And it's all a part of being successful and making that equation work. I'm going to find somebody that's done it before, somebody that knows how to do it, and I'm going to model what I'm doing. For right now, I'll get creative later. But for right now, while I'm getting started, I'm going to follow that guy, see what that guy does, and I'll go and ask him questions, and he won't even know that what I'm doing, but he'll be glad to give it to me because I'm no threat to him. No threat. Good question. Yes, sir.
Do you feel that more regulation is needed to ensure or avoid another financial collapse in the future or whatnot?
Well, I'm going to tell you, I'm a banker. I think there's enough regulation already. I do think, though, that I think you can spank the wrong hand. And I think that's where, when we talk about the vision being implemented, I think that is the big problem. And most bankers feel the same way that I do. We're being punished for something we had nothing to do with. And so we have regulation that that's being unfairly slapping us in the face right now because of something that somebody else did. And so during the election season, all you had to do was say, it was amazing. I grew up all my life, bankers were respected. A lot of times, back in the old days, bankers were the guys, they were the most respected guys in town. You could trust them, they're honest, you go to there and get money, you were the banker. And I saw the last election season, You know, banker was a dirty word. I was mortified, you know. I go into places and I meet new people and they say, well, what do you do? I'm a banker. Ooh, you're a banker. Ooh. And so it's the most amazing thing to me. So you can spank the wrong hand and it can be just as detrimental and take even longer to correct problems. And a good example of that, when that term banker was used, what they're really talking about is the AIGs of the world, the investment bankers. They aren't commercial bankers like me. They don't take in deposits and make loans and do all, they don't do any of that. What they do is, they're not really bank. What they do is they invest in buying and selling of all these different things. And that's what they do. And I think in that world, I think they have enough regulation. I just think the people that were regulating them need to do their job. And they need to find a different way and do their job better. There's no way the SEC should have allowed what was going on at AIG to happen. They had every tool. They got Market Watch. They have all kinds of tools to stop it. If it doesn't make any sense, then you need to go sit down with somebody and explain how it makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, then compliance at the SEC needs to step in and deal with that. And they weren't doing it. You know why? Because a lot of money was being made, and they refused to look at it. Now, we'll talk about Bernie Madoff in this regard. There were all kinds of red flags on that guy. I mean, he was a walking red flag. But no one stopped him. No one stopped him. So I think there's regulation. I think the regulators that are in charge of these organizations need to do their job. There was a beautiful thing that was created in 1933. Beautiful thing. When you had the creation of the Federal Reserve Bank, you had the creation of the SEC, all this happened in 1 year. You talk about broad sweeping, changing legislation. This whole country was retooled in 1 year. And you had the creation of the SEC, Federal Reserve Bank, FDIC, Office of Comptroller of Currency, all that stopped. All that happened at that one time in history to fix the problems that occurred in 2020 wouldn't happen again. But what happened? We had, during the 80s, we repealed much of it with the Glass-Steagall Act. So we didn't, we said, well, we can watch ourselves. We don't need all that, those silly regulations. The markets will decide. Well, that's good. I believe in a free market system. I'm a capitalist. But I also realize the historical value of what happened with the New Deal. The New Deal was a beautiful model, and it worked extraordinarily well. But when Glass-Steagall came in act and they repealed much of it, and then later we had continual repealing of Roosevelt's New Deal. And so we had a weakening and a weakening and a weakening and a softening and a merging of these institutions. So then everybody now is a banker. Whether you selling insurance or, you're making a car loan, or whether you're selling somebody a mutual fund, you're a banker. And it didn't used to be that way. You were an investment advisor at one time.
I have one last question for you. The students need to get to class. But what are 2 or 3 things the students should be doing at this particular point before they graduate to ensure that they're able to move into the job force with some success?
Well, I think, I'm glad you asked that question, because I can look at my business and I can see, in fact, when I was driving over there, I was thinking about it, and how good it would be that when students graduate, that they a lot of the training, the entry-level training, let's say if you're going to be for example, a financial analyst, you go in and you pull apart a financial statement, you underwrite it to commercial lending standards. You don't really have to wait on that. I mean, those are things that you can prepare for now. But having a focus of what it is that you're going to come out and do will take you a lot further than coming out and then trying to figure it out. Focus in on getting in the industry that makes you happy. It may not be my industry, may not be someone else's industry, but whatever, and it may not be working for someone else at all. It could be entrepreneurship. And the heart of what I'm doing now is entrepreneurial. And it could be that. But prepare yourself for that now and don't wait. Because I think that when you come out and you're able to impress people with your depth and breadth of knowledge, even though you've not actually done it, whatever it is that you're trying to do, I think that is the most impressive thing to a prospective employer. Okay?
Well, thank you, sir.